Hi guys, welcome to call number 8, I believe now.
Yeah, I think so.
So welcome everyone to, if you're watching live and if you're watching back. First thing, before we kick off, we are going to be in this call covering right from basically turn progression. Okay, so from start game to end game, how are you guys, thinking about the game, how are you scoring, and also how are you closing off games to maximize as many points as you possibly can. So today's call is going to be all about scoring as many points as you can and how are you going to deny your opponent from scoring points. So we're going to cover a couple of the ITC bits. Obviously, we know it's very popular. We'll be covering some ETC and also some book mission parts as well, just how they differ, okay? And when you're thinking about lists, what it is you need to do in order to do that. So I've got a couple of very different lists that I'm going to be running because here in the UK, we have book missions and ITC. So I need to be able to flitter between two, and my lists are going to change between that. So I'll use those as an example later on. What we'll also do as well before we kick off this recording though is, if you haven't done so already, please go and check out the game tracker, and I want to see where everyone's up to. Okay, so at the end of next week, there won't be a mentoring call, obviously, but on that, I'm going to give you guys a hard time if you haven't completed any of the game, okay? Because I want to see what you're playing, what you're doing, how you're performing, and I want to make sure I'm, keeping you guys on track for that. I think that's fair enough.
Yeah, sounds cool.
And I also want to find out as well where you're at with the attendance. So go back and that first sheet, fill in if you watched the calls live or whether you watched them back. Everybody should have something next to their name, whether it was live or watched back. It doesn't really matter too much. So if you're unsure, just put watched back if you know you've watched it. If you're unsure, then watch it, okay? So I'll be checking up on you guys next week, and I'll be sending you a message if you haven't done it, all right? Because I just need to keep you guys accountable. So hopefully you guys have had some pretty good games so far. Hopefully you all enjoyed the lists that we've given you. So Matt, you'll be getting your list this month. And then I think everybody else has theirs. So hopefully you like it. Like I said, there's a couple of admin things that we'll sort out tomorrow morning for you if you haven't quite got those yet. But hopefully you like the play style. Have you all watched each other's as well to have a bit of an idea of what else was going on list-wise? Yeah? Thought it might have been giving you some good information, as there were some absolutely disgusting lists that we put together, and really like obscene, like the one that I would really like to try is Guilliman, and I think it is 17 Centurions. That list looks horrific, but anyway, there are some nasty lists out there. But anyway, so this month what you need to make sure you're doing is use those lists, or if you don't like it, that's completely cool. Use your own, or maybe take elements of it. So whether you're running, 50% of that list and you want to, use 50% of your own, completely cool. Track it. This month is going to be all about performance tracking, because at the end of this month, we're going to have a one-to-one call with all of you. Okay. So basically over the end of June and start of July, I'll book in a phone call with most of you. And then I'll allocate other people as well, like Mark, to speak to people, and Dan and Jack and things. And what we'll do is, check up on how those games are going. So we need data to go by, okay? We don't just want to go into those games thinking, how are you getting on? You're like, well, yeah, not too bad, but not really sure. Well, let's look at some data and see what, maybe it's your secondary picks that are wrong. Maybe it's your deployment. So this month, be as analytical as you possibly can. Take pictures of your deployment, take pictures of your lists, okay, and you can attach that into that Dropbox or just refer to it on your phone or whatever it might be. Have I missed anything?
Not like no.
Cool. So guys, let's go over right from square one. The most important thing about, obviously, when we're playing this game is scoring points. As you know, my slogan is CPs for VPs. Everything is about victory points, okay? So whatever you can do to deny your opponent from gaining CPs and also then scoring yours. So let's start off with a very, very simple way of looking at this. If you've ever used a book mission before, they're not very particularly heavily scored, okay? So some of them might be like, you might score 5-4 in book missions, okay? Or maybe 6-3, okay? Now, straight away, the book missions as they stand include First Strike and Linebreaker and Slay the Warlord. So you can prevent 2 of those. You can prevent them from getting First Strike, and you can prevent them from getting Warlord if you deploy properly. Now, all of a sudden, that becomes a very, very tight game, okay? Because you're denying them maybe, what, 40 to 50% of their total points scored, all right? So that's just one thing to consider. Like, I spoke to a guy yesterday who sort of wanted a bit of help with his list going to the Warhammer World GT. And he told me this list, and I said, mate, you're not going to get First Strike with that list. That list is not good enough. If you don't get First Strike in a small scoring game, that could be the difference between you winning and losing. And in straight knockout rounds like GTs, yeah, that's not really very particularly great. In other, you know, more sort of well-rounded ones like your ITC, your ETC, it doesn't matter too much because they, you know, score up to maybe 30, 40, 50, 60 points in a match. So
sure.
Just be very considerate of those. So when you are thinking about deployment, we'll go through some, hopefully by now you can identify what your play style is. And, you know, are you, for example, a gunline? Are you a horde? Are you an Alpha Strike combat list? Or are you more of a sort of Counter-Strike elite army? Okay, so hopefully you'll fall into one of those 4 camps, and you then need to deploy appropriately. So one of the things that I would suggest you do, and now with the game being so varied with either, you know, you go, I go, and that's it, or deployment where you deploy your entire army and they deploy their entire army, it's not guaranteed of who's going to go first, who's even going to get the +1. So yeah, it's very, very difficult now with deployment, and obviously terrain in Battlefield can massively change these things. But typically what you want to be doing is having an idea of where you're going to deploy even before you even start. Okay, and whether that's micro sections or mini detachments in your list, you need to know, okay, what am I going to deploy first? And when we go on to the use of chess clocks as well, this is really important. You do not want to be stumbling in deployment. I think that's one of the things I see a lot. We talk about deployment, that is something very easy, but when you are deploying, there's 2 types of deployment which is very difficult. When your opponent has barely anything on the board. So for example, if I'm playing Tau and they've got 6 drops of Fire Warriors and they've got 3 drops of Marksmen, and then they've got some Pathfinders, and then they put some stuff in Deep Strike, none of their decent stuff is on the board, yet I'm trying to counter where they're going to go, and that's really difficult because I'm literally deploying up against nothing really.
It's worse with GSC. You're literally deploying against counters.
Yeah.
That may or may not be something in that area.
Yeah, and all their good stuff's in Deep Strike anyway. Yeah. Whereas when you're deploying against knights and they have to start deploying their big units down, you can start to measure out those threat ranges. But the trap that you can fall into is sometimes as well with elite armies. Obviously, you've got the terrain on your table to be an advantage. So again, we'll go on to selecting sides. But what my point is I'm trying to get to is once you've selected the side that you want and the terrain that is going to be in your corner, what you can sometimes fall in the trap of doing is deploying your worst units down. Okay, so one of those things would be like deploying all of your guardsmen next to terrain so they get a cover save. But then what you realize, and this used to happen to me a lot, and I see this happen a lot with the Death Watch, is then people go, oh no, I don't have room to touch my Death Watch guys next to terrain. So now all of a sudden you're not getting those 1-up saves from the Terminator. So straight away, what you need to be able to do is have an order of what you're going to place as a rough guide in your deployment. So you literally want to have a cheat sheet, okay? And that cheat sheet will go units from HQs down to, you know, your Lord of Wars or whatever it is, but you're going to arrange them in the time in which you can deploy them first, okay? So for example, Mark's list, 3 Ravagers and an Archon, he knows that's going to go down somewhere together. So you literally need that big of a footprint, okay, to have those 3 models and then the Archon right in the middle. So you need to look at the board and think, right, where is this footprint of this detachment going to go? All right. And then at what point do you place that down? Ideally, you need that to be down. What's your movement? 14?
Yeah, 14. Yeah.
14, and then a 36-inch, then a 36-inch shot.
Yeah, yeah.
So you've got a 50-inch
range.
You've got a 50-inch threat range, right? So you need to make sure that that goes down within 50 inches of whatever you need to kill that first turn. Because again, if you misjudge this and you end up being 51, or your opponent out deploys you and all of a sudden you're 51 inches away, those Ravagers are not going to do anything and you're going to struggle to get first strike, okay? Especially if they've deployed very counter defensively and maybe they've got some -1 to hits now, which is very common. So you just need to make sure that your order in which you place your units down is it might sound sometimes a bit basic, but it's important you do this, because often if you get caught out, like for example that tank commander can't see anything, or those Ravagers aren't in range, or that Leviathan Dreadnought isn't in range, that's it. All your opponent will do is say, you go first, and you're stood there and you've got nothing to do. And that also means you can't play prepared positions. So the order in which you deploy is extremely important. But again, you need to identify right early on, and before we cover this in a little bit more detail, when you're looking at your opponent's list, what are you looking for? So for example, let's take Mark's list, right? Mark, what is your biggest threats in your list? What have you got?
In my list?
Yeah.
Talos.
So how many Talos?
In the most recent list, 6.
6 Talos, okay.
Yeah.
And what else?
Razor Wings.
How many?
Flyers, 3.
Okay.
3 Ravagers.
Okay. So you've basically got 3 main threats to your army. The rest is chaff, right?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, so...
Or support, which is what the HQs do in that list.
So straight away, you can look at this and go, if you need to, you could, with your list, put your Flyers down turn 1. They can go in the very corners of the board, because you know nothing else is going to go there. And your opponent is probably going to predict you're going to put them there anyway, so you may as well deploy them. Yeah? Because then that actually gives you 1 deployment, 2 deployment. You say you've got 3?
Yeah.
So 3 are going down. That's 3 drops. They're hard to hit anyway. You can just be very arrogant with putting them down first. Because sometimes you don't actually want to put down your foot troops. And again, that can be a trap, is putting your foot troops down early, like your screen, if they counter deploy and all of a sudden you find yourself in combat turn 1. Okay? Or maybe they're being shot off the board turn 1. Because if you'd have saved it later, you could have just switched them to the other side of the board. So with Mark's list, Flyers, put them down in the corner straight away, okay? Because they're probably going to go there, right? And you can rely on the fact that you're probably going to be out of range if you're in the corners of the table. Right, that's that sorted. Then what have you got next? Your Talos?
Yeah.
So again, with the Talos, where are they going to go? They can take any hits. So unless you're fighting maybe Tau, where you might look at line of sight, apart from that, they can go straight in the middle.
Straight in the middle.
Because you're going to do one thing with them, right?
Push them up the board.
Exactly. So again, with this list, the most vulnerable part of Mark's list is those Ravagers. So those Ravagers need to go down last. And then if the opponent has anything with strength 6 and -2 and multiple damage, they're going to cause Mark a really bad day. Okay, so it's at that point you need to analyze what gun or what unit am I waiting him to place before I place my units down. Does that make sense? So what is the most valuable part of your army and also the weakest? Because that's the bit you need to save till last, and you need to identify that very, very early on. Okay, now if you get choice of deployment, you then need to look at the table and think, okay, what table side do I need to do one of 2 things, for example. And again, this is very important. If let's say they've picked, we can go on to like specifics, but whilst we're on this point of sort of deployment and unit deployment, does he have any units that don't need line of sight? Okay, is there any like elements of the board in the middle that's going to allow him to push up closer so I can't shoot him. Okay, so I'll give you an example. If he's got Gene Stealer Colts, Gene Stealers, if he's got Custody Bikes, okay, Harlequins that are double moving, you need to look normally I don't know what it's like for you guys in the States, but typically in the UK, we normally have a massive piece of line of sight blocking in the middle, okay, or two smaller bits of line of sight blocking, right? Now, what you want to be looking at is essentially what he wants to be able to do, your opponent, is move his maximum move and advance and then touch that piece of cover, because then that means in his next turn he jumps over the cover or moves through it, and now he's charging you, okay? Whereas if that was the other way round, so he wants in his first turn, should I say, the piece of deployment that's further away from him, and that also means that bottlenecks your firing lines. So really what you want is the line of sight blocker that's further away from you, so then as he comes over, 1, he's easier to screen out, 2, he's easier to move block, and 3, if he fails any charges, he's now out in the open versus being hidden. Does that make sense? So what you want board wise when you're playing against an Alpha Strike combat list is the table that has the biggest line of sight blocker furthest away, okay, from you. That's kind of ideally what you want. Even if you don't have, and if you have that army, then you need that one as well, obviously, because that's exactly what you want to do with your tactic. Because if they've got a gun line, you're basically going to narrow down those field lines. Okay, now this might sound like a little bit of a small fry potato sort of point here, but you'll notice over the course of the game that actually maybe you made more charges, or you just weren't able to get the shots off, whatever it might be. But trust me, that is kind of what you want. Okay, now as a Harlequin player, I know very well about deployment and terrain, because you have to be on the ball. Missed anything there with deployment? Terrain?
One thing I would say about deployment is that so what you mentioned was time. So I think one of the biggest opportunities for dithering is in deployment. And then that starts a chain of stress, which then where you question yourself, and then you're not sure, and you get, especially in a tournament, have I made the right choice, and should I put this down or whatever. So I think fundamentally the best way to go about it is to understand how you want to deploy your list before you get to your tournament.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've said on numerous occasions is physically get the models out and then roll a deployment, right? Or like do all 6 basically. Go, right, how am I going to deploy for
Hammer and Anvil,
but etc. It's that muscle memory. It's that sort of like thinking about it in your own time in your own kitchen, or you know what I mean, or your office or whatever. To go, right, I'm going to take off now, or do one a night. You know what I mean? Just do like, it leading up to the tournament or whatever, and then write it down. Right, I'm going to here, whatever.
Yeah.
So that way you say, I'm confident, I know what I'm going to do. And then the other thing is, don't be afraid to make mistakes. You can't get better without making any mistakes. You've just got to then understand what your mistakes were. So don't stress about it. Just get it done. You might lose, and then you come back and go, right, next time I'm going to try and.
Then you kicked off the team if you lose, all right?
That's harsh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, fair. But no, it's a really valid point Mark makes, is just cut out that dithering, and again, have that order in which you need to do, have the maps, like Mark said, already laid out, where you're going to put those units down. I think it's a really, really good point, really valid. And also, off the back of that as well, one thing that a lot of people get caught out by is that they put their characters down last, okay? I've been caught out with this before. You put your character down, and then you forget that he's got flyers. Flies over the back of you, shoots you off the board, snipers your characters away. Yeah. So sometimes what you want to do, if you've got those little chaffy units, like let's say Mark, you've got some Cabalites in your list, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So what you could do is know, right, I know that my Archon's going to go here. I'm just going to put my Cabalites in a circle around him. So turn 1, I know he's protected. Yeah. Simple. And another thing that you can do as well with your deployment with your units is basically, if you know you've got like a really hard-hitting character at the front that you need to protect, like a Demon Prince, for example, then what you can do is interlink your units, okay? So I'll use my fingers here is like, let me see, actually, I've got something better. So basically, just while we quickly cover this, if you've got your units here, your screening units, you want to put them like, obviously the maximum distance apart. And then what you want to do is put the second unit, like unit B, in between. So then that means in order to shoot your character, this pink one, they have to now to get through 2 lines. And this also means for Overwatch, you get 2 units to fight, all right, rather than just the one. So if you're, for example, Tau, this is extremely important. And if there are any Tau players, then you can literally do this to another degree as well. So you've literally got three lines. I used to do this with Deathwatch a lot as well. Or like, let's say you've got Primaris Marines, which are Ultra Marines, where they can fall back and shoot. Or you've got Swooping Hawks, cool. You want to put as many boys in as possible, interlink them so that if somebody charges, they have to charge all 3. Does that make sense? And then that way you can really maximize. Yes, exactly. Brian's right. If you're a Tau player, you're also off the team. Agreed. Jack,
you go.
Watch it. You better get over to those orcs quickly. So you've got some strategies there with your deployment, okay, if you're expecting that first turn alpha strike, okay? So that covers, so number 1, I want to see a list of how you're going to deploy, okay? So what units need to go down first, because if you can get away with like 8 drops, even before your most valuable stuff hits, you're probably going to be okay against those matchups that are going to be, you know, worse off. Because remember, your opponent, unless they're part of Vanguard Tactics, is not going to be doing this. So they're going to be making those errors. They're going to be putting those units within your range of your threat range so that you can actually shoot them off the board, okay? So then following on from that, when you get to the point where I think one of the really strongest things that you can do is in the you go, I go deployment, you need to make a decision. Are you going to deploy aggressively and go first, or are you going to deploy defensively and go second, okay? So I'm awful at seizing and also winning the roll off, so I just deploy to go second every time, okay? And one of the strongest things that you can do is deploy to go second in your heart, okay, and in your mind you know you're going to go second, but deploy a unit to be very aggressive, and it's what we'd call a bait, okay? Your opponent then will deploy really defensively because you've baited them in thinking that you're going to go and have that first turn, whether you've got the +1 or you've deployed your army first, okay? So use this baiting strategy to a unit that you know you can quite happily get rid of, or you can, and I'll come on to some ways in which you can counter this, but imagine I'm let's say my chaos list, for example, okay? Or my, I don't know, we'll go with Blood Angels because I've got Blood Angels really good here. So you put your massive units of Death Company right down the front line, okay? Your opponent goes, oh my God, I'm going to get hit by Death Company turn 1. So what do? They figure out how far you can move even before the game starts, and then how far you can move in advance, move in charge, okay? So then what they do is they deploy really defensively. You at which point say, okay, actually you're going to go first. And they're stood there completely out of range of everything, and they waste an entire turn. That gives you the upper hand straight away. Not only you going second, because normally going second in missions is much better because you can see how many they hold and how many they kill. So going second, I think, is the way forward in the game. Okay, if you can plan an army to go second, because the other thing with like Blood Angels, with like things like the Phobos Captain, you can redeploy that unit, so you can pick those Death Company up and put them at the backfield again, okay? So again, you can bait your opponent to do something. They change their entire strategy based on what one little thing that you've done, and now they're on the back foot. Nothing's in range, and they're nowhere near objectives, and they won't be able to get board control. And they've essentially just given that over to you because you're now going second, and if you move forward, or if any shots they do have, you can always play prepared positions anyway, okay? So that is a really good strategy, is literally baiting your opponent that you're going to go first, that you really want that first turn, and then you say you're going first. Can be a really strong strategy, okay? If you're a Deathwatch player, Matt, for example, for you, mate, you want to be going second in nearly every single game you play. Going first rarely does well for you, okay? Because you can drop in exactly when you want to, when you need to be. So going second is ultra powerful, all right? Eldar, you can't hit them, may as well go second, okay? They can lightning fast reflex. Again, they can phantasm. So Eldar have got these tricks as well where you can redeploy up to 3 units. So if you're a good Eldar player, you can do this and it wreaks havoc with your opponent. So if you are playing against Eldar, remember that they can do this also. If they've put their shining spears on the front line, they can put them to the back line. If they've put them on the back line, maybe they'll move them to the front line if they go first. So you just need to know in your heart, are you deploying to go first or are you deploying to go second? And you need to stick to that decision, whichever way it goes, okay? Does that make sense? Don't try and do a half-assed job thinking, oh, well, if I go first, that unit's in a good position, but then if I go second, this unit's in a good position. Don't do that. No, I want to go first or I want to go second. And that is how you need to deploy, okay? And if you're not particularly competent with this, deploy to go second every time, all right? So that's cover. Obviously, you guys know now in regards to that. So the next thing is understanding at what point does your army score points, okay? So for example, Jack's army with his orcs is extremely quick, and he gets board presence very fast. So Jack can pretty much guarantee for the first 4 turns, he's gonna control more, okay? So first 4 turns, he's probably gonna get a couple of bonus points as well, so he can get them in the bag, but his list isn't gonna kill anything. So his list is about controlling more, and hopefully killing as many as his opponent to try. And that's all Jack needs to do as a good player, is just try and kill as many as his opponent does. So if his opponent kills 1, he needs to kill 1. If he gifts away 1 unit, let's say if Jack's going first, if he gifts away a unit, he needs to make sure he kills a unit. If he's gifting away 2 units, he needs to make sure he's killed 2 units, all right? And if he can only kill 1, he needs to make sure he only gifts away 1 as well, okay, with that list, because it's very, very fragile. Genestealer Cult work very, very similar, okay? Genestealer Cult get board control and they can also kill more, but they can also be killed very, very quickly, all right? So again, understand if you're putting a unit out in the open or within threat ranges, and you're going to give that unit away after you've obviously fired, make sure it does something, okay? Don't just give somebody a kill point, because this is where, especially now as the games get much, much tighter, the game is becoming more balanced, players are getting better all the time, the fight for points is on right from the get-go, okay? You need to be ensuring you're getting your secondaries as best as you possibly can, and obviously we've spoke about secondary picks in the past, but typically it is very much about you need to fight for every single point you possibly can, and understand by looking ahead of the game, where am I right now, where do I need to be next turn, and what points do I need to get, okay? Because there can be such a thing as well, is not trying to score all your points straight away. I'm sure you guys who have played ITC have found this before. Let's say you want to get your Butcher's Bill, which is kill 2 units every turn. Don't just smash 4 out the park turn 1. If you know 2 of those units are going to do nothing to you, save them. You know, drop them down to 1, maybe 2 guys left, and then they're easy Butcher's Bills then for that next turn, and then to get you that kill more, okay? Because you can only get that kill more once in that battle round, regardless of whether you killed 10 more than your opponent or 2 more, right?
Yeah.
So you just need to get that 1 more every single time. So then you can be more efficient with getting that kill more every single turn, all right? So is that kind of making sense to you guys so far? I know I'm covering quite a lot here, but this is quite a, I suppose, in-depth. Yeah, and this as well is applicable to whatever army you play. So you need to understand, if you are playing ITC, or for example, if you're playing book missions, then you need to understand what your army does. Does it hold or does it kill? Because even with book missions, you're either holding or killing, aren't you, with Eternal War or Maelstrom. So you need to understand, does my army hold or does it kill? Or if it's a combination of the two, how do I then prevent my opponent from doing what theirs does best. Okay, and that's a real skill there. So maybe what would be really handy is this week after this phone call is that you post in the group what your army is and what you perceive its ability to be. Is it a holder? Is it a killer? Because then you guys can look at this and we'll hopefully have a synopsis and a complete overview of all of the different factions that are played within our team here. And then everyone can start to look, you know, for example, Chris's army, you know, with the Space Wolves, it has the guard do the holding part and the wolves do the killing part. Okay, so it does a slight mixture of the two. Whereas, for example, Brian's list doesn't hold that much because it's just an absolute outright killer. You know, if he gets movement blocked, he's in trouble. If he's playing against Tau, he needs to stay out of range. Okay, someone playing, you know, 100 plague bearers aren't killing anything. They're just going to wrap you, and all they're going to focus on doing is getting hold more every single turn and ensuring they get their secondaries. Okay, so when you also on the have I missed anything so far?
No, I don't think so.
So before I move on and talk about
one search, though, it's not missed so much, but that's a really interesting question. Is when you're facing an opponent, asking that question: what does this army do best, and how do I shut it down? Because actually, it might be that your target is the rank and file troops, and you're leaving what is deemed to be its most potent assets alone.
Yeah.
And saying, well, I can weather the barrage of those. But if I shoot all his troops, he's got nothing to hold, you know, the objectives with. He's going to struggle. I did it against Dan once actually. But not out of choice. He was running a Imperial Guard plus Space Marines with Dark Angels with a character in the speeders. So I couldn't touch the speeders. I think in the first turn I wiped out 40 guardsmen, and then the next turn I wiped out another 40 guardsmen, and he had nothing to then protect those characters with.
Yeah.
And his characters did some damage, but then they were just there ready to be mopped up. But what did his army do well? Well, it went out and controlled objectives with some firepower sat behind it to cause nuisance. Well, I stopped the ability for it to be able to hold objectives.
Yeah.
And then that's how I won the game.
Yeah, no, definitely. And something similar to when I used my chaos list against Jack last week, not last week, a couple of weeks ago, he used his Dark Angels list. And he identified that my list, like my Chain Lord and my Terminators in the middle, that were basically a bully unit. And that's a very common strategy now, like with the Bullgrins that people use, the Paladins. They're just sat in the middle of the field, and they're there to pick on you. So if you go within 12, 18 inches of it, it's going to move 6 and charge you, or double move and charge you, whatever it might be. That's what it does. However, if you think about it and understand that I don't need to kill it, you don't need to go near it, it's going to be in one place. And if they're not very good at picking their secondaries, and you can then work on all the units around it, and you just leave it and you surround it and you just keep firing into the middle of it, you can just stay away from all of its threats. So you don't necessarily need to kill the Chain Lord to shut it down. You just don't need to go near it. Okay. So that's a really valid point from what Mark's just said there, and understanding, okay, so then when we go on to secondaries or cards or whatever it might be, or the mission, then one of those things to identify is, does your list give up secondaries? And what secondaries does it give up typically? What are people picking up against you? And then it goes over to, how do you deny them of those points? Because if you can deny your opponent of 4 points, then you're going to be in a really strong position, because that just takes the pressure off you scoring and maximizing all of your secondaries. So sometimes, you know, let's say they've gone for the character killer, and you decide to use your army but without its maximum buffs. Yeah, you might not be as efficient as killing, but now you're preventing your opponent from scoring those 4 points, okay, by hiding your characters or just being a lot more defensive with them. You can negate those 4. That's essentially like negating them getting the bonus point every turn, and that's huge in the game, is denying somebody 4 points. So one of the other, I'm just thinking if I've got an example for that. So yeah, one of the games that I played on Tuesday, I used the Incarn, I used my Eldar list that I've made. My opponent took Big Game Hunter. So as soon as I'd knocked out all of his weapons that were able to get rid of my big games, that was it. He just couldn't kill them. Although my big games, or like my tanks, weren't going to do much in that game, the only reason why I decided to do it was literally to stop him scoring those elements. And then the other two things that he had in his list, so he basically took Big Game Hunter, because I had 3 what are they got? I always forget their names.
Shit. Fire Prisms.
No, not Fire Prisms.
Night Spinners.
I had 3 Night Spinners. And I also had the Incarn. So they were the 4 Big Game Hunters, and he fell into that trap. Like, he's never going to kill my Incarn because I'm just too good with him to let him die. And all I need to do is prevent him from killing my, big games, for example. Then the other thing they had was Recon. And the thing that's going to get him Recon, majority of the time, is his Flyers. So I got rid of them. I got rid of his Flyers. I left the Ravagers alone, although they hurt me, quite hard. I was just focusing on getting rid of those Flyers, and I basically stopped him getting Recon for 2 out of 4. I stopped him getting Big Game. He only got 1 Big Game Hunter out of 4. So by this point, I'm massively up on points, okay? Because, or I have the potential to be up on points as long as I score my secondaries, okay? So again, understanding what is your army doing, what is it good at, and just because they have horrible units and you feel like you need to kill them, you don't necessarily need to, like Mark said. So don't be tempted by picking Mark for Death, things like that, if really you're going to struggle, okay? So, and then you need to understand what secondaries are going to stack, what aren't, and then also understand, okay, which ones are you going to pick to score. So again, if you're playing cards, Matt, for you, if you're playing with the Maelstrom, you need to be really objective when you draw those cards. Which cards do you want to score? Which cards do you need to score? And which cards, if you score them, are a bonus, or which ones are actually going to be better to keep in your hand till next turn because that's an easy pick, for example, okay? You don't need to do everything in the first turn. Sometimes spreading out your points is going to be better, all right? I'm just thinking if I've missed any points off the back of those elements. So yeah, do have a look at your secondaries in regards to what you're being scored against as well. Is there a common theme between what they're picking against you, and is there any way to deny those in the future? Because again, denying those VPs is just as good as scoring them. Let me just refer to my notes a second. Okay, so the next thing as well is just on the back of killing things, is understanding your efficiencies, okay? So it's really important to know what statistically one of your units does against your opponent's unit, okay? So for example, we worked this out earlier with me and Mark. If Mark's got 3 Talos and I've got my Chain Lord, if I get all my powers off on him and he's +2 to wound, he can be an absolute beast. But if I throw my Chain Lord into combat with 3 Talos, what statistically happens? Because I could be arrogant enough in the game situation to just throw him in, couldn't I? But we realized against 3 Talos, I kill 1 3/4, and then the other 2 that's still alive kill me in return. That means I can't fight twice. However, if he's only got 2 Talos, let's say I shoot 1, I go into combat with 2 Talos, I kill 1, I weather the storm from the second that's still alive, and then I kill him in combat by fighting twice. Now my Chain Lord is alive, okay? And he is then able to fight again. So you need to understand, okay, if you've got a unit that's maxed out, how much of their shots, shooting, combat, psychic abilities, whatever, are needed in order to do the job. Okay, and again, this comes back to what is it at the start of your turn? What is your turn objective? What is it that you need to do that turn? And what, if it happens, is just a bonus for you? All right. So again, you need to understand what it is that, and you need to, like, there's many different things out there that are extremely tough and durable that could cause you a hard time. Custodes are one, so Custode bikes, they're on the way back now. A knight obviously is something you need to figure out. So what's the max unit of a bike unit? Is it 6?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so you need to be able to kill 6 bikes in a turn. Okay, 6 Custode bikes, you need to be able to kill that in one turn.
Because the max is 18, I think you can get.
Yeah. So you need to be able to kill 6 Custode bikes. You need to be able to kill a knight on a 4-up save. You need to be able to take out a wave serpent with -2 to hit on it. You need to be able to kill, what other horrible things are there? You need to be able to kill 30 plague bearers, which are -1 to hit, and a 5-up invulnerable save and a 5-up feel no pain. So you need to have the arsenal to do this, because when you decide to do it, you need to eradicate it completely. Okay, you need to be able to kill 10 immortals or 6 destroyers if you're playing Necrons, or you need to be able to kill 30 orc boys in a turn so it can't come back again, basically. And you need to be able to kill 20 red corsairs, space marines. Okay, you need to be able to do that. And if you can't do that, how are you going to play around it until you are able to? Okay, because if you're playing against those red corsairs, then you might only want to get rid of 5 of them. They probably won't bother redeploying 5. They're going to want to wait until, because they'll be arrogant enough and stupid enough to wait until they've only got 2 models left. But let's say you can't kill all 20, but you can kill 15, or kill 7 turn 1 and kill the others in turn 2. And in that way, there's no chance of those 20 boys coming back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, yes.
Okay. So same with a knight. A knight can be a huge trap. If you're looking to get that kill, okay, make sure you do not start with the knight unless you know you're guaranteed to kill it. Get your kill somewhere easy, or eradicate the unit that you know is going to, move block you, or it's going to try and disrupt you, or it's going to score for them, or it's looking like it's about to get on an objective that's going to get them to hold and hold more, or it threatens one of your units that is most valuable to you. Get rid of that first, then any leftovers you can then start to put it on your knight, because then on their knight, for example, or their big Leviathan, or their big insert Magnus. Okay, well, actually Magnus you need to kill turn 1, by the way. He cannot stay alive more than a turn. But the rest of it, do you see what I'm trying to say here? Yeah, don't get hungry and try and kill multiple things. Decide what you're going to kill and then get rid of something else. So typically my strategy when I'm playing ITC, I want to get rid of something that's going to hurt me, and I want to get rid of something that's shit that's going to score them points, like chaff units. Okay, I can bag myself 2 kills a turn consistently. That puts the pressure on straight away to my opponent. They need to kill 3 in order to get that kill more. They need to kill 2 just to draw me. All right, I'm not trying to go after 2 tanks, because it's not going to happen. I'll probably only kill 1, and then all of a sudden I've only got 1 kill, and it's easy for them to get that extra point. All right, so this was one thing that happened in your game when you played Jack, wasn't it, with the Eldar flyer list?
Yeah.
I was like, if you'd have just left the Riptide alone and just got for the Fire Warriors and the Fire Warriors, you get 2 points straight off the bat. You're going to get first strike, you're going to get kill more. Yeah. So guys, just really think about that. And then finally, when we come to closing out the game, at turn 4, you need to tally up all of the points. Okay. At the end of turn 4, tally up all of the points and identify how far away you are from winning, how far away you are from drawing, or what is it that you need. And you basically need to mathematically figure out, if everything goes well for your opponent, how many points are they going to score? And then what do you do in order to negate 1 or 2 of those points? And how do you maximize the points that you need to score? And at this point, it's not about killing. It's about being in the right position to hold objectives, okay? Because late game, there's minimal buffs, there's minimal stratagems to be spent to rerolls. So statistically, not everything happens how it does and as efficiently it does at the start of the game. So your efficiency goes down in terms of killing. So you need to, the game becomes about holding. So again, this is where you need to identify what units have done their role, and then what units do you need to start to play in a different capacity. So when I played Jack with my Admech, okay, against his orcs, as soon as his big thing was dead, whatever it's called, a Gorkanaut, I started to use my Dune crawlers as these are like my anti-tank vehicles, right? They're my fastest thing in my army. So I just bundled them all up the board. They don't need to kill anything, okay? They literally don't need to kill a thing. They need to move, and they need to get, and they need to advance, and they need to stick their massive base on top of an objective, so another guy can't come within 3 inches of it, okay? Because it can't come within an inch of me. I'm on a massive base, okay? So all of a sudden, I don't care if they get wrapped, because it's not going to die, and it's just getting me that objective point. Does that make sense? So just because that, if that unit has done its job, what else can it do for you? So again, you need to be very quick and analyze the game. Right, I don't need to kill that anymore, or it's not a threat to me. So what could my units be doing to better serve, again, scoring me VPs? You know, like if you've left, you know, like this game on Tuesday when I was playing against Dark Eldar, he had a Ravager left. He was hitting on 5s. I don't care about it anymore. Okay, 9 shots, 3 will hit. Okay, so he'll wound all of my hard, heavy stuff on 5s anyway. Maybe 1 hits. Okay, I'll take 2 damage. All right, I'll take that every turn for 3 turns. I don't care. What I do care about is making these units step on these objectives, wrapping that unit so he can't shoot these units that are scoring me hold more. So my game become about protecting my witches, and as soon as I sort of got rid of his heavy firepower, I didn't care if he killed my tanks. So just because he could kill my expensive units doesn't mean I need to worry about them, because they're not winning me the game. I need to focus on protecting the things that are winning me the game, and those are the things that are getting me board control at turn 4. Okay, so that's number 1, is look at what units have a duality and how do you maximize their ability in order to score you points. And also at turn 4, just take the time. That's why I use a whiteboard, guys. So whiteboard, marker pen, I'm tallying up as I go. It takes me 10 seconds to count up their points, count up mine, and I can go, right, he'll probably get a hold, he'll probably get a kill. Okay, I've got that unit out in the open. Do they really need to shoot their 2 shots? No. Are they better off hiding to prevent him getting a kill? Absolutely. Okay, so just because you can shoot and do something doesn't mean you should do it. What you're probably better off is going, right, well, hide them 3 little units that are now, you know, really vulnerable, and that stops him getting 3 kill points potentially. Yeah. Yeah, so Chris, great point. Laminated the score sheet from Frontline Gaming that use all these perfect, mate. Absolutely brilliant. That's exactly what you want to be doing. So guys, we're going to wrap that there. Have I missed anything?
No, I think we're spot on there. I think there's some good stuff. There's a lot to take in this time, so you might actually want to watch this back, take some notes or whatever, you know what I mean? So if we break it down into how do you utilize this information?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot coming at you in 50 minutes there, an hour or so.
Sorry, I know I've just gone for
but if you can get it into your pattern of play, you will you'll be helpful. So if we summarize it slightly, so we're talking about deployment, and we're saying know how you're going to deploy, know which order in which you're going to deploy.
Yeah.
Practice it, practice it for the different deployments, and maybe think about, right, if it's a horde or not, how am I going to do this? And basically, you're asking your opponent, what's your range on that sort of thing? What's your threat range? So I'm going to try and put that out of the way.
Yeah.
And then, as you play more games, you'll know different armies. You'll go, right, okay, I know Eldar can do this, I know can do that, etc., etc.
So that Mark's just raised that really good point, just to remind you guys now, as soon as you get off this call, go and write down what your army is and what it does. Is it a killer? Is it a holder? Is it a mixture of the two? And what do you suffer from? Okay. So do you struggle against a horde army? Do you struggle against an alpha strike list? Put it down so we can start to talk about this in the group. Okay. Because when I do a live call next week, I want to go through this stuff.
Yeah, sure.
This is how we're going to really maximize those lives, is by making those posts. Guys, I'm really struggling against hordes at the moment, okay? Or how do I go against a gun line? We can talk about it. but we need a bit more information from you. So say what your army is, your current play style. Is it a holder or a killer, etc.? Is it a gunline, horde, alpha strike, or elite army? And then what are you struggling against, okay? And start to make these posts in this group. And then what we can start to do is start to draw some correlation between them all right? And the other thing that I want you to start to think about as well is plan your secondaries. So literally plan in advance, what are the 3 that I'm going to mainly go to? So what are the main 3 that we're going to go through? And then we can then make sure that you statistically go for them more often than not, so you can really do that. Chris has asked, can we get a 5 to 10 minute breakdown from Brian about the BAO? We're not going to have time.
Well, we've got to go, I'm afraid.
We're going to have to, unfortunately, shoot, okay? But what we'll do, Brian, if this is all right with you, how about I interview you about the BAO? You cool with that? Would that be all right with everyone if we do that instead? So what we'll do is maybe me and you, Brian, will arrange a time when we can go live next week together. And me and you can just break it down, go over all of your games, you know, and I'll basically do a full-on interview for you. All right. In fact, we could probably make it even better, and we could put it out as an Ask VT. Well, you know, because I want to start to include you guys as you're playing more, as you have these experiences, as you really master your faction. It'd be great. Look, you know, you've got so much knowledge to share and experience. Let's get it out there.
That's a great idea, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's do, if we can synchronize with Brian, depending on what his schedule is.
Yep.
So we can do either Ask VT would be the best thing, get you on there.
Yep.
Or if not, we'd record it or do it live in the group or something like that.
Perfect. All right, guys. Well, we've been having a epic day today of painting. We've got how many bikes, Custo bikes painted?
11, I think. I've done one already, so I think we've got 10 now.
Yeah, so Custo bikes, and I've just been working on my Black Legion. So ready for Greetings to the Warp. They don't look very good there. They look much better in person. Anyway, guys, hope you, yes, we'll do that. Rakeem will do that for you. We'll get that done in the morning, all right? As soon as we wake up, we'll sort out your list, basically.
I've done it, so there's been a problem with the software. So basically, by the time you wake up tomorrow, it'll be in your inbox.
Cool.
Because I've 100% done it. It's just not come through for some reason.
Yeah, and I've got it on here as a backup.
Yeah.
But yeah, we didn't know where it was with being typed up and things. So anyway, we'll sort that out for you. Guys, have a great one. If you get any questions, post them in the group and I'll answer them. All right, maybe tomorrow. All right, and then because I can always go live. If there's loads of questions, I can always go live again in the morning when we're doing some painting or something.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
All right. Anyway, guys, take it easy.
Have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend.
See you later, boys.